Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the You Look Happier podcast. My name is Ellie Forsyth and I am a life coach and a counsellor, and I am joined today by the lovely Alysha. Hi Alysha.
Hi.
How are you feeling?
I'm good, yeah. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Thank you for coming on to our podcast episode today.
That's okay.
Now, before we begin, could you explain to our listeners a little bit about who you are, your story, and things which make you you?
Okay, so I'm nearly 29 and I'm an occupational therapist and have been for about 4 years. So I was diagnosed with pulmonary hypertension on the 1st of May 2018, and at that point I was second year of uni,
Okay.
so that stopped
Wow.
because I was just not well enough to continue.
Okay. So what were you studying at uni, first of all?
Occupational therapy.
Okay. So the reason why I asked it, it's interesting because you told me what your job is. So we'll go into that a little bit later.
Yeah.
Tell me about this condition. What is it? How does it affect you?
So it's a lung condition that affects the arteries in your lungs. And because of that, your heart compensates and works 10 times harder to be able to pump the blood around your body.
Wow. Okay. So is this a rare condition? Is this like really common?
So it is rare,
Yeah.
to the point that it took me a year to be diagnosed and backward and forward with the doctors, because at one point they were saying, we can't find anything. There's nothing wrong. And I said, I can't walk up the stairs.
Wow.
There is something wrong. So it took a year from me collapsing at the gym to then having my diagnosis.
Oh my goodness me. Okay. So prior to you fighting with the sort of medical professionals saying something's not right, I need further tests. I take it you had never heard of this condition before?
I actually had.
Okay.
So a family friend has it.
Right.
And I actually, when we used to meet at family weddings and parties and stuff, I used to think, oh, that's such a shame. And it's funny, when I was going through my whole year of being diagnosed, she knew exactly what it was, but could never felt like she could tell me because it's not something that you'd want.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So what were the signs then? early on?
So I had nothing up until I collapsed at the gym on the treadmill. So I remember running and feeling faint, so stopped. And then I remember up until trying to walk off it and then waking up on the floor.
Okay. So it's quite dangerous,
Yeah,
really, isn't
yeah.
it?
And I was very active before that, spinning classes. My family are quite active, so we've got a gym at home. So, doing all of that, running. I did wolf runs. So I was very active. I had asthma, but it was manageable.
Yeah.
So then I had, so ambulance came, they did tests and stuff. And they were like, oh, maybe it's just because you haven't eaten. But after that, I just felt like I wasn't myself. I couldn't walk without being breathless. I couldn't do the stairs without feeling like there was something heavy on my chest when I got to the top.
Right.
And so it took a good year and lots of tests for them to go, actually, you've got this.
Okay. So something as simple as walking up the stairs. These are any stairs?
Yeah, at home.
Okay. Okay. So just so that I'm understanding, the treadmill, you basically collapsed. The emergency services came.
Yeah.
And then what? Did you go?
They didn't take me in.
Right.
Because they said, your blood pressure seems fine.
Yeah.
They do like a blood sugar test
Right,
and all
yeah.
of that. Fine. I just felt like something wasn't right. And I'll be honest, that year was a blur because I just, it was trying to fight with medical professionals to say there is something wrong. I know my body. And that's another thing. If you know your body and if you know there's something wrong, you fight until you get the answers that you need.
Wow. What did that fighting look like for you?
Difficult. It was tough because it was sort of like somebody's telling you there's nothing wrong and I'm going, well, there is.
Yeah.
And it's like, the doctors are saying there's nothing wrong and they can't find anything. At one point they said, oh, there's a hole. But everyone's got like some sort of hole in their heart. Anyway, everyone's born with it. But they just wouldn't. And it's not until they did a specific test that tells you there is something wrong, and was until they found it. Then I got transferred to a specialist hospital that deal with it now.
Right, okay, because that was going to be a question of mine. Was this all dealt with by like local GPs, like our hospital here, or were there more intensive teams hospitals that you then got put onto? So
I had a procedure that was done at our local hospital, but didn't really tell me the outcome of that. And they said, oh, there's a couple of centres around the UK that specialise in this. And at that point, still, I didn't know what it was. I was thinking, okay. So they were like, pick one. So I'm at the Royal Free in London. And I remember going up there and they wanted to do the same test again. And they did the test. I was awake through it. I'm not very good with needles either. So I was sort of like, God, I don't know. Yeah, I'm terrible with all that sort of stuff. But you just power through, don't you? And you want answers. You know, I've been dealing with it for a year. I'm ready to know what's wrong. And I thought, it'd be something that they can fix. And I remember lying on a bed in hospital and my mum was sat next to me and the nurses came in and, it, you know, the look on their faces said it all.
Right.
Because I was 22 or 23 at that point.
That's so young.
It is. And I had plans. There was things I wanted to do. So they walked in and the look on their faces was like, oh, we're really sorry, but you've got pulmonary hypertension. And I just burst into tears because my first thought was, this is it, my life is over. What am I going to do now? I'm going to be stuck at home for the rest of my life. And I didn't want that. I had plans. I wanted to go to Australia with my degree, wanted to travel.
Bless you. Now, the fears in which you had, you know, when they came in, they gave you your diagnosis.
Yeah.
Where had those fears come from? Had they been from the family friend and how they had been affected?
Yeah, so she has the pump, which is what I've got.
Right.
And I always thought, oh God, how must that be, having a line coming out your chest? You have to carry a box around with you all the time. It's in the bed, like it's in the shower, you can't shower properly. And I thought, God, I'd hate that.
So you already had that sort of knowledge and that then came to your
I thought, that's it now.
Okay. So just so that I'm understanding, there had been a year where you were having these tests, thinking something isn't right.
Yeah.
You were getting really short of breath. What other symptoms, if anything, were indicators?
Fatigue,
Right.
really high fatigue, unable to walk, I'd say, to the end of the street without feeling breathless. Very slow paces, couldn't do hills. And it was sort of like, while I was having that year of tests, I was still on my placement.
Right.
So I even then knew, because I was in a hospital, so, you know, you do a lot of walking in a hospital. And even then I knew there's something not right here. I just can't breathe. I felt suffocated and chest felt heavy.
Okay. So you already had asthma. Were there any aspects of you that were thinking that it was something to do with that?
No, because it felt different.
Okay, so you knew.
Yeah, it felt different.
Got you. And you're on your placement. Was this then impacting your actual studies at the time? This is, I'm talking sort of before the London diagnosis.
Yeah.
How were things for you there?
Really difficult because people didn't understand. And they actually, I remember going into, so you on a placement, you have like a practice educator who you go to and they support you through your placement. And they were like, oh, you know, we've called uni and just have a chat. So I thought, didn't think anything of it, just thought it's going to be a chat.
Yeah.
And I walked into this room and they said, oh, we're ending the placement. And I looked and I was like, what do you mean ending the placement? Oh, because we don't think you're coping. I said, but you're not me. How do you know I'm not coping? And so the placement stopped.
I am so sorry to hear that. I'm in shock.
But then my educator sat there and cried. And I thought, why are you crying? You've just like swept something from beneath me. I had no words. I just then went home and I was like, this is, I feel like another nail in the coffin, something else to worry about.
Yeah.
You know, and I worked so hard to get on my course.
So what happened then?
So then I had a chat with uni. They knew what was going on and they said, maybe we need to just pause it. Maybe you need to get yourself to a place where you're feeling better, mentally and physically, because it does affect you mentally.
Okay. So placement is paused. Are you still having the tests at this time?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. So, you know, when they gave you the list of the specialist hospitals, and one of them is London, did that sort of trigger anything in your mind thinking, wow, okay, these are big hospitals with the teams?
So the specialist teams within the hospitals, yeah.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, no, do you know what? It's really funny because I look back and it's a bit of a blur. I just thought, I want to be better now.
Yeah.
So let's just follow this journey, follow this path that they're telling me to go down, and hopefully I'll get a diagnosis, that might be better, and everything will be fine. Because you live in that hope that everything will be fine.
And then if we look at when you were in London, so you shared you were with your mum, they came in and they disclosed to you what your diagnosis was.
Yeah.
How did that impact you?
Massively. I remember for the first 2 weeks, I didn't want to speak to anyone. I didn't want to talk about it because every time I talked about it, I'd get upset. And I think part of it was because I was sad, but also frustration. And when I'm frustrated and I can't express how I feel, I just get emotional.
Okay.
But yeah, for 2 weeks, didn't want to speak to anyone. Don't ask me about it. I probably took to my bed for about 2 weeks.
Just to cope.
Yeah, because I just couldn't understand. And it's like, what did I ever do that was so wrong that I now have to suffer with this for the rest? And I know it sounds like I'm feeling sorry for myself, but it's not. It's just frustrated with my body that why?
Yeah.
I just wanted to know why. And people are like, everything happens for... I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to make me feel any better.
You're not wrong for that either. And I respect you for being really honest there. Because, tell me what you think about this. When some people are, they get really, really bad news, something happens, they have a condition, they get a diagnosis. A lot of the time we are accustomed to think, well, it will happen to other people, it may not happen to us. Yeah. It doesn't always seem as though that is our journey that is set out for us, which is why it's so shocking, because how many times have you heard, I never thought it would happen to me? Yeah. Was that how you were feeling?
Yeah, I never thought I'd be in the position that I'm in now.
Well, I'm so grateful that you've come here to share today, because even when you contacted me, I needed to learn. I wanted to learn about it. So I'm hopeful that this can put some insight into the listeners.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had your time processing the information. It sounds as though you were in shock.
Yeah.
Then what happened?
Then it was time to put the big girl pants on.
Okay.
Because life wasn't going to achieve the goals that I wanted to achieve by itself.
Ooh, I like this. Okay. So what did that look like for you?
So I can't not come on here and not mention my mum. Because she is an angel.
Okay.
And
what's your mum's name?
Anita.
Anita.
So part of my being able to put my big girl pants on was her.
I love that.
Yeah, she is God's gift. Like, I've never met anyone as powerful and as supportive as she is. And she really helped me get onto my journey. She's like, you can do this because we haven't got any other choice, but I'm here. We can do this together.
So it sounds like you had a powerful woman behind you and then you became a team to get your power back.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and I'm doing like a step by step, mainly because it helps me understand a timeline. So you were struggling and then you recognise, right, in your words, time to put my big girl pants on, which I can't wait to hear about. Yeah. You had your support from Mom. Did you know at that time that you could, feel positive from this, achieve your goals eventually? Did you know that was even possible?
No. And I don't. Wow. And I think even now there'll be days, like I said to you before, there'll be days where you think, oh God, I can't do it today. It's not a good day today. And that might be physically or mentally.
Yeah.
But you have to push through those bad days to get to the good days. Otherwise, they're not going to come. And you have to make those good days, like enjoy the people you've got in your life and the job that you do. And there's always someone worse off than you. I always live by that there's always someone worse off than me. There's somebody who'll go into hospital and get an awful diagnosis. So I'm lucky that I can still do what I can do to the best of my ability.
That is such a strong mentality to have. Where'd you get that from?
My mum.
So your mum has that as well. Okay, I love that. So you decided, right, I'm going to make the most of this. I'm going to keep going.
Yeah.
What did you then do?
So the first step for this type of condition is medication.
Okay.
So there's no cure. The only real cure, if you like, is having a lung transplant, which it doesn't happen till very later on in the condition. So when people are quiet and well. So my first step was getting on the medication, managing the side effects of those. So they were just tablets. So I took 3 tablets a day, and was closely monitored by the hospital. But they were doing these blood tests and there was just something that wasn't adding up. They said, do you get achy joints? Do you get any like bad redness? And I said, not really. I said, I've had eczema. My joints feel okay.
Yeah.
They said, because we think you've got an autoimmune disease.
On top of everything that you were already going through.
Yep.
So how did that then land with you?
I think because I didn't have the side effects of that or the symptoms of lupus, I was like, okay, so what do we do about it? Okay. Immunosuppressants. So I was on those this was during COVID then. So then I was classed as vulnerable, so I couldn't work, couldn't really go out in the community because your immune system is suppressed anyway by the conditions that you have, but then you're taking something else on top to manage the autoimmune disease.
Okay. So just for anyone listening that may be thinking, right, okay, what does that mean then?
Yep.
So an autoimmune disease,
Yep.
How does that affect somebody? What does that do?
So from my understanding, which isn't the best, is that it's a blood condition that affects is it your white blood cells that affect your organs? So They think that what's happened is I've had lupus and that's given me the pH.
So you had the lupus first?
It attacks your organs, apparently.
Okay.
But I never had any. I was never had any symptoms of lupus. Even now, I might get the odd feeling sore, but nothing that would think, there's something untoward.
So there was no indicators there.
No.
But what they've advised is the lupus was probably there, which has kicked off the lung condition, the pH.
Yeah.
Okay. So they provide you with that information from the tests in which they're doing.
Yeah.
You're still on just the 3 tablets a day for the pH.
Yeah. And then 2 tablets twice a day for the lupus.
Okay. So it was confirmed you've definitely got it.
It's shown in the blood, yeah.
And how did, if anything, the medication affect you?
So headaches. I still have regular blood tests because obviously you're on medication, so it can affect your kidneys and your liver. So you've got to have regular blood tests. But it was just more like headaches and feeling uneasy, and it wasn't anything compared to what it is now.
Right. Okay. And did I hear correctly that this was during COVID time?
Yeah.
So you were classed as really vulnerable. On top of dealing with all of these medical conditions and this shock of having to figure out how to battle through this, the element of actually speaking and seeing people, socialising, you weren't able to do that.
No. So when I went onto the medication, went back to uni, managed to finish.
Okay.
So managed to do that while I was on the medication. It sort of stabilised things a little bit.
Right.
Just got rid of those symptoms that I was having of breathlessness and fatigue. It just sort of a weight was lifted a little bit.
Wow.
So I was able to go back then, finish my course, and then COVID hit.
Right. Okay. Good to know. So the medication which they prescribe to you, how does that, you may not know the answer to this, but how does that be able to stop you from being breathlessness?
I have no idea. I'm assuming it opens up the arteries in your lungs to let it pass.
To let the air through.
Pass better, yeah.
Okay. Got it. Just out of interest, I was interested to know that. Okay. So you managed to then stabilise as much as you could do whilst mentally dealing with figuring out how to get through the here and now, but also potentially thinking about the future as well. But you managed to go back to uni and finish uni.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Because that tells me you didn't give up.
Yeah.
Do you see that as the situation? Do you look at the situation like that and think, yeah, I'm proud of myself for that?
Do you know what? No. And people say to me, you're so brave. But there wasn't a plan B.
So there wasn't a choice.
There wasn't a choice to not be. And I don't see it as brave either. I just see it as I got through it. I know that sounds really naive, but I just got through it because I had to, because I wanted to finish.
And you did.
Yeah.
I love that. Did you find it difficult going back?
Yes, because it was a completely different cohort. My cohort that I had my friends in, graduated the year before, and watching them on my phone, pictures of them graduating, it was hard. And I thought, I want to do that.
Yeah.
And I will.
And you did.
And I did.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Genuinely, I mean that. You should be really proud of yourself. So you completed uni.
Yeah.
You battled through.
Yeah.
Then what happened?
And then things I think slowly started to decline in terms of health-wise. I just felt like I was getting more breathless, and although the medication had given me that lift and it gave me that boost, I felt like it was just dipping a little bit. So increased my tablets, but there's a test that they do called a right heart catheter.
Right heart catheter.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's a tube that goes from your groin up into your heart, and it measures the pressures in your heart. So it measures how hard your heart is having to work to compensate for your lungs.
Okay. Wow.
So I think an average person is below 20. And at the time, I think mine were close to 100.
So your heart was basically working nearly 5 times harder than a normal heart.
Yeah, to try and
compensate.
Yeah,
for
which is
your
why
lungs.
I was feeling the way I was feeling. Because you imagine your heart's only one size, isn't it?
Yeah.
And having to work the heart of basically 5 people, it was struggling.
And even like that procedure of having that tube put in, like, even that is a significant thing, which I imagine would be difficult to go through.
It is, yeah, because I'm terrible with needles. I feel like I'm just, I feel like some people can do it and, but I'm not very good with pain, not very good with needles or anything like that. And my mum always says, the one child to get ill, you're the worst. Because I was the one that had to be pinned down in the doctor's surgery for a flu jab.
And then you're having all of
now
these
having
treatments
all of this,
on you.
Now I'm like a pincushion.
So were you awake for that procedure with
so they
tube?
just make you sedate. They just sedate you, so you're just a bit like spaced out.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it really. I'd rather them just say knock me out, just put me to sleep.
Yeah.
I'll enjoy that a lot more. Have a good old nap, and I'll be bright as rain then. So yeah, they do that test. The tube then comes out, and it just gives them the best reading. That's the only test that they can do that gives them the best reading that they need.
Right.
So at that point, they said, right, we need to start talking about IV, which is a Hickman line that goes into your heart and comes out, connected to a box that supplies medication 24/7.
Okay.
And at that point, again, in tears, because I was like, I don't want that. I said to my mum again, I said, this is it. Who's going to want to marry me now with one of these? And that was, as a young girl growing up, you just think of getting married, meeting somebody, having kids. Mm-hmm. And I thought, God,
that makes me really sad to hear. And I can understand as to why that is potentially where your thinking went to, because you already knew from the family friend that how severe this condition can be. You're going through all of these tests. You then get told you've got another condition on top of it. You've then figured out that your heart is now working it's 5 times harder, isn't it, than a normal heart.
Yeah.
Subconsciously, did you know that they were going to suggest that?
Yes.
You did.
I knew it was coming.
Right.
And I'd fought it for a long time. I mean, I think I'd been diagnosed 5 years, and I'd fought it for that long. They wanted me on it sooner, and I said no. And they were like, do you need to speak to a counsellor? I said, no, I don't. No, I don't. I'm fine.
I know that I don't want this. I hear you. So tell me about this line then. What is it?
So it basically manages the symptoms manages the symptoms of the condition. So stops you feeling as breathless.
Okay. So similar to the tablets we're
but
doing?
more invasive. It goes directly into your bloodstream.
Right.
So it's better. But obviously with anything come side effects. So when I first went on it, I felt sick. Stomach was in bits constantly on the loo.
Yeah.
Headaches. My face would go like a tomato. So like when I'd be out, people would look at me as if to go, well, what's wrong with her face? Because it was like red raw, like I'd been burnt. That's what it looked like.
And why was that? Because you were...
Because of this. So every time you change it, it's quite potent.
Right.
So obviously it's like because it's opening up all your vessels, it's making everything expand, isn't it?
So what, the blood is rushing to your face?
Yeah.
Okay.
So sometimes I could just wake up and it'd be red raw. And I've not done anything, not had any, like, you know, sometimes you have a facial or whatever and it makes just, I'm not, stay away from all of that because I know my skin will just be like, no.
Okay. You were placed onto this because the tablets which you were taking, they, you know, because you had your dip, they weren't working as well.
Yeah.
So this is like a really intrusive method of giving you your medication. And this might be a technical question, but just because I'm interested, like, does it know when you need more, or does it like give you just constant?
No, so you start off on a low dose.
Right.
So they teach you how to make it up. And I remember I had to go down there so they could train me on how to make it all up. And I couldn't do the training. I just kept crying because it was just like a shock. I couldn't believe had this dummy in front of me with a pretend line. And I was like I just thought, oh, I don't want to be doing this.
Yeah.
But there's no other option. I've got to just power through because then hopefully the next stage would be a lung transplant and I'd be better.
Yeah.
Because in your mind, there's always that hope that you will be better.
And as you mentioned earlier, the lung transplant is something that's usually offered further on down the line. Mm-hmm. So how many years are you expected to?
I think until the pump stops doing its job.
Okay, so similar, the tablets stop doing their job, then you have the pump, the line.
Yeah.
And for those listening, could you describe what the line is? Like, so it goes in your heart and out. Is it big?
It's like a small plastic tube.
Right.
So it comes out to the box, and I have to carry the box with me at all times. So it'll be lying next to me in the bed. When I go and see my patients, I'll have a more of a leathery bum bag so that it's wipeable and stuff.
Yeah.
Just 'cause it's always got to be with me, and I've got to be really careful about it not getting tugged or anything like that, which has happened before.
Really? Mm. Do you mind sharing what happened? That's quite scary, no?
Yeah, my cousin's dog jumped up on me and it came out.
And then what?
Down to the hospital.
Wow. Okay, so it's not just a quick...
No, because they're very cautious with it. So they always make sure your stock levels are high. So the stock gets delivered to my house. Always make sure that's high and I've got a buffer stock. Make sure that I'm never on it. So when I change my medication, I make it all up first and then I change it because they don't want you to be off it for longer than, I think it's a minute or two, because it then leaves your system. And then when you reconnect, it's like you're starting up again. And obviously I've worked my way up to the dose that I'm on now. So if it would just hit your system, you'd be like, whoa.
That is really interesting. I've not even thought of it like that, like a minute. So that's how long they're basically advising, because you then go into a withdrawal, essentially.
Yeah, and I've had withdrawal and it's awful. Terrible.
And what did that feel like?
Tiredness, feeling sick, feeling faint, because you don't realise how much it's doing for you until it stops doing what it's meant to do.
Right. Okay. So you are then navigating your way through living with, what do you call it? Do you call it a line?
I just call it a line, yeah.
A line.
Yeah.
So you're living with that. Mm-hmm. Are you working at this time?
I am.
Okay. So just so that we stay on the timeline, you finish uni, you then go through this situation. Mm-hmm. So you're figuring out, right, okay, meds aren't working, I now need this. Yeah. So you're dealing with the heartache, essentially. You were saying that you were upset, figuring out, right, I've been putting this off for like 5 years, trying to avoid having it done. How did you get into work? Like, tell me about that side of things.
So started off, when I started working, I wasn't on the pump.
Okay.
So I was just on my tablets, and tried various clinical trials that the team were doing, but just weren't agreeing with me. The side effects are too bad, and I'm, running to the toilet every 10 minutes, and it's just you can't sustain that.
Yeah.
So managed on my tablets obviously for 5 years, and in between that worked in a hospital, worked with stroke patients, and really was able to work my way up in my bandings. So that was really good. But then because I started to feel unwell, I wanted a job that I didn't have to constantly be on my feet for.
Right.
Because obviously, like anybody, being on your feet all day, every day is tiring. But then with somebody with a physical health condition, it's double the amount of tiredness.
Of course it is. So you started looking elsewhere?
Yeah. So I then become a locum, which is like agency work.
Right.
because it meant that if I needed a day off sick, I wasn't penalised for it.
So you just don't. Is this how it works with agency? You just don't get paid if you're off.
Yeah.
Right.
So
okay.
holidays,
It's like self-employed essentially.
Yeah, holidays and sick, you don't get paid, which at the time, you know, at the start was very difficult. So I had my line fitted, and it was actually Halloween, and 2 weeks later, I started to feel really unwell. And I thought it was the pump, like feeling feverish and speaking to other people. And they said, oh, we've had similar, but just wasn't getting better. So I had to go to A&E and had pneumonia and was off for 6 weeks.
Oh, my goodness me. Is that because of the low immune system?
Probably, yeah.
Because your body couldn't fight
Yeah.
it?
And it got to the point where, you know, during the night while I was in hospital at 4 a.m,
Yeah.
you know, they were calling my family saying, you need to come in.
Because it was that significant.
Because I was that unwell.
That worried about you. So were you aware of what was going on at this time?
Yeah, they spoke about
lucid?
ITU and said if we can't control this, that's our next step. So they'd called the team and said, you know, possibly expect her. Yeah, so that was scary. But at that point, Ellie, this is really hard to say because, like I say, I want to put a positive spin on it.
Mm-hmm.
If you want me to be honest and real,
Yeah.
I'd say at that point, I was like, I'm done. I'm done now.
Because it had impacted your
Yeah,
life.
because it's so hard. It's, you know, like constant fighting and battling with myself and my brain to go, it's okay, you'll get through this, but it's hard. You know, people say, you know, so brave, and it's like, you should see me on the days that I'm not.
Yeah.
But at that point, I was like, I've had enough now. I've actually had enough now. And it was funny because family would visit and go, do you remember us visiting? And I said, no. And they said, you weren't there. Like, we were looking at you and talking to you, but you weren't there. And at that point I said, I'll tap out.
Yeah. And I respect you for being honest. I really do, because and I know that myself and the listeners will know, like, such a small amount, because you have to be able to just fit it in and tell us the important bits. But you were living this. This is your life.
Yeah.
And this is your future.
Yeah.
So the aspect of being given bad news after bad news, feeling awful, I would imagine, that would take its toll on anybody. So you get pneumonia.
Yeah.
Then what? Then what happened?
Then off for 6 weeks.
Right. So you're not getting paid now because your
But
agency.
luckily I was still at home.
Okay.
So it was, you know, there's a plus, isn't there? There's always a plus in something. So yeah, I was living at home. So went back home, recovered, then went back to work.
What a woman. I'm in awe. Okay. So the pneumonia had gone, had
Yes.
it?
I think I had it like probably a couple of weeks later, still had a bit of fatigue.
Yeah.
But nothing like what it was, no.
Okay. And then you are battling through just living with your line and the autoimmune disease.
Yeah.
Okay. So other than what you've already shared, like, how else has this impacted your life?
So I don't know if I mentioned this when we just talked a little while ago.
Yeah.
When I was first diagnosed, when they first told me, he sat me down and he said, you're not planning on having kids, are you? And I said, well, no, not right now. I'm 22, no. But why? Oh, we don't recommend it.
They don't recommend it.
People have done it and either unfortunately passed away, because you've got to think that you're growing another person. So your body's not coping as it is. And then you're having to produce life and just... So unfortunately people pass away, or they are closely monitored. But because of the medication, the side effects of that, it can cause issues with the pregnancy and the fetus. So they will take you off pretty much everything apart from one tablet. So then you're struggling then.
Because they then don't want you to be medicated because it could then pass through.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then it's looking at, well, what's next then? What do I do now? What?
You mentioned something earlier where you said, you know, when you first sort of found out about the line, you were thinking, you know, the potential of having a partner, meeting somebody, and then that being in the way, essentially, that impacting that side of things. I take it you were single during this.
I have been ever since.
You have been ever since.
And I think that's my own confidence and my own insecurities, I think.
So this has significantly impacted your psychological health and how you feel about yourself as well. Okay. Now, I get it, right? Yeah. I understand where you're coming from because of everything that you've explained to me. Yeah. When you're sharing all of this, I'm literally thinking, how the hell has she got through this? Like, and you will hear this all the time, but you know, you're so strong, and I'm so grateful for you being so brave coming on here today. But that element of, I'd be in the wrong job if I didn't then go, okay, so your confidence has been knocked. How can you overcome that moving forwards? What can you do? Because you deserve happiness, Alysha. So what can you do in order to prevent that from stopping yet another thing in your life?
I don't know the answers to that.
Well, with what you've shared, so you've mentioned it affects your confidence, and it sounds as though there's some fears there. Yeah. And when I say fear of maybe meeting somebody and them judging you for it. Is that?
Yeah, and also the whole like sort of kids thing. So, you know, my mum's always said, you know, there are people in relationships long term that find out they can't have kids later on. You know, it's just because you know about it now. And it's like, as you know, and you'll have to, you know, whoever you meet will share that information with. But as soon as they know that I can't have kids, nobody's interested.
And you know that for a fact, do you?
I've told people and they're not interested,
Okay. So just from what you were sharing with me, I love what your mum has said there. I love what Anita has said. You know, some people, so there's a real positive spin on that. So that's clearly where you get it from. Some people go through, they'll be in relationships for years and years when they finally think, right, we're ready to have kids, and then they can't. It's impacting you more because you can see, rather than you looking at, okay, meeting somebody, seeing how it goes, living in the moment, you're then forward thinking and thinking, I can't have kids, so they're not going to be interested. Tell me, what if, and we've completely digressed, and I told you that this would happen. What if you met somebody that didn't want kids and you met them and everything else was great?
Yeah, great. That'd be amazing. But eventually I'd want kids, I think. I think I'd look at other avenues.
Okay.
But it's, you know, like I said to you before, I said I'm on my journey.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm getting to the other side now.
Yeah.
But don't for 1 second, you know, think that don't have days where I think really negative, because we're human.
Yeah.
And there'll be people out there that do think, God, I don't know if I could do that, or that's not going to happen for me. You know, I'm on this journey, and I think throughout my whole journey, I will always have that little bit of doubt, because you do, because, you know, you didn't plan for this, but you just got to live with it and see how life goes. But I do definitely believe this. I always say this, there's always someone out there for somebody, isn't there? We've just got to wait for the right person.
There is absolutely always somebody out there for somebody. And what I'm hearing from how you've explained it is you have been and you are on a journey of figuring all of this out, battling through your own career, getting that on track, getting that sorted. You've had some really good news recently, a life-changing thing which we'll go into. You've already shared that with me, and I am buzzing for you for it. But my only advice to you would be, don't let this get in the way too much of up here, you know, of how you feel about yourself, because you are a lot stronger than you might think that you are. So with that being said, pneumonia, you got over the pneumonia. Then what happened?
So then I had the line, I think, for about 6 months. It came out by the dog.
Right,
Yeah. So then back to the hospital so they could repair it. Came home, but the repair had undone. And I remember lying in bed to turn my light off, put my hand under the duvet, and I was like, that's wet. lifted the duvet, there was blood everywhere because obviously the line, you forget the line's attached inside. So everything that's going in, so it's pushing in constantly. But once it stops pushing in, something's got to come out.
Right, yeah.
So there was blood everywhere. So then A&E to get a cannula put in so that I could connect my pump up. And that's when I started to have the withdrawals because obviously I'd been off it for over an hour. The hospital just wouldn't do it. They were like, oh, there's issues with your line. I said, there's an issue with my line, but put a cannula in my arm so that I can get my medication running again. But it's really difficult because people don't know about it. And this is the thing, people don't know about the condition.
Yeah.
And so they're not educated to know that actually we need to get her hooked back up. So I sat there for hours.
So the most important thing to remember is that medication needs to be
Constantly
constant.
Yeah.
So the fact that it had come out, that was your priority.
Yeah.
But what I'm hearing is, say, and no disrespect to any healthcare staff, you know, you one yourself, essentially, but not everybody is a specialist.
No.
So understanding what the priority is, you went without.
Yeah. So then back home to sleep, and then 7 a.m. wake up, back down to London to get this line sorted.
Without your meds?
Without
Without your line, were you having your tablets?
Yes.
Okay.
So got back up there and they said, look, we can't, because it's come out now twice, well, they came out and then they repaired it and it's come out again. We can't now take it out and put a new one in. And I was like, and it sounds really silly, but I'm going to say it anyway. Mm-hmm. It was I think it was a Thursday or a Friday. And I said, but I'm getting my hair done on Saturday. I want to go back home.
Yeah.
Because the other option was to stay in hospital over the weekend, get some antibiotics in me, and then they put a new line in on the Monday. But I was like, I've got a hair appointment.
Well, that takes priority, Alysha. Completely.
And do you know what it was for me? It wasn't even the hair appointment. It was the fact that I have to sacrifice so much as it is. Why should I have to sacrifice something that I want to do?
100%, because how much of this have you been able to even have a say in?
Yeah, and that's the thing.
I mean, remind me, how long has this been? How long have you had this for?
So it will be 7 years on the 1st of May.
7 years on the 1st of May. 5 years you stopped or avoided having the line.
Yep.
So 2-ish years you've been really dealing with it. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, and I keep saying this, but what happened after that? Just because I'm interested. I don't normally do a timeline, but I think it's really vital to know.
I told you it's been a journey.
Yeah.
So after that, they said, right, so if you want to go home, because we need to keep this medication running, you're going to have a PICC line put in. So cancer patients who have to have chemo regularly will have a line. And it's not like this sort of line. It's more semi-permanent. And it just stays in the arm wrapped in like a bandage.
Okay.
But I can honestly say it's one of the most, because you're awake, you've just got your arm out in this room and they're putting this PICC line in, the burning sensation that I felt. And my dad was this side of me, so I had to face like that. And I was just crying because the pain of it was horrendous. So then knowing that I've got to have it in and then come back again on Monday, I thought, oh God, like it's just so draining. Like you feel like you've cried enough, but there's more, you know? Mm-hmm. So had that put in, came home for the weekend, then back on Monday to have the line taken out. Sorry, the line was taken out on the Friday, have a new line put in and have this taken out.
So the Pick Me line was only temporary, essentially. So you went through all of that pain.
Yeah. It was literally over the weekend. And probably my stubbornness because I wanted to go home.
Well, I love that about you. Okay, so more trips to not just Cov and Warwick. Obviously, you're from Coventry, I'm from Coventry.
Yeah.
This is London.
Yeah, so it's like, I mean, at best we're talking 2 hours, but it could take you 3, 4.
And who was supporting you? I think I know the answer to this throughout all of this. Like, tell me about your family. You've mentioned your mom, you mentioned your dad.
So, mum, dad, I've got a brother and a sister.
Right.
The oldest. But I also had a husky.
Okay.
And he was, we're on sick days. We were a little tag team. Yeah.
I love that, especially when you mention like a dog was actually responsible for pulling your line out. Yeah. You've got your own dog and you've got a pretty big dog by the sounds of things.
So he passed away in September.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So it's been really tough because he was more than he knew it, was my rock.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, on days when I was at home ill, in bed together, we'd get up, have something to eat, get back into bed, and he was just my little buddy.
Well, they
my,
know, don't
my
they,
bestest
Alysha?
friend ever.
Yeah.
And if love could have saved him, he would have lived forever because he was so special.
I love that phrase.
He was really, really special. So family at home, immediate family. But then obviously life's changed a little bit since then. So, and I'm, the box is helping.
Yeah.
I'm feeling like I can be a little bit more myself.
Well, let's talk about that and touch on that then. So what we've heard so far is the unbelievable journey that you have been on. And I'm not saying that because I feel like I have to say that. I mean it. Genuinely, the back and forth, the fighting, the figuring things out, knowing that there's something wrong, being told, we don't really know what it is. Yeah. You knew your body. Yeah. You shared with me right at the beginning how you were really active. So you used to go to like gym classes and stuff like this. Now, we've heard that you were able to continue with your education, get a bloody degree and get a really respectable job. So you've worked hard and you've proved any doubt in your mind wrong there. Active-wise, how did it impact that?
You mean like completing activities and stuff?
Yeah.
So now or after the pump or?
Let's go after the pump. So this is like the 2 years kind of time, where we are on the timeline. Were you able to still do any of your activities?
So no swimming because you can't get the line wet and the pump isn't waterproof. Okay. So showering, you can't get the line wet and this has to be round the side of the shower because it can't get wet. So I use like, the handheld bit of the shower. Yeah. Can't wash my hair in the shower either now because obviously when you're washing your hair, you're soaking, aren't you? Yeah. So when I was living at home, it was head over the sink, washing my hair.
I wouldn't even have thought of that stuff. So where does the line go in? Does it go in?
So it's about here.
Okay, so on your chest.
Yeah.
So that would make sense then because there's a shower. Yeah. Like when people break their arm, they can just put their arm outside of the shower, can't they? Okay. So it was impacting you that way. It's impacting you by sort of fears around your future. What's your future going to look like? Same question again. Then what happened?
Then I think I started to get a bit more confidence. I've always wanted to venture out.
Yeah.
And have my own space.
Okay.
So that was the goal that I worked towards.
A living space?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay. So you're living at home at this time. You've gone through all of this, but you've still got your goals of achieving what you deserve to achieve. So how did you work towards that goal?
God, it was tough, like any homeowner.
Yeah.
That process.
On your own?
Yeah, that whole process was like, God. And it's hard because when you're in a relationship, you've got somebody to bat off. And I obviously had my mum and dad, but it's not the same, Like picking things or, is that the right vibe? Are you getting the vibe when you walk in here,
So you are then on the journey of saving for your own house, just so that we're understanding, and figuring out what kind of house you want to live in and all of that kind of decision making. Yeah. So I imagine you are significantly saving.
Yeah. I'd saved for a long time before that because my plan was to move out like early 20s, but then this happened. So it was on the back burner, but I was still saving as I was working as much as I could. Yeah. And I'd living at home, obviously that helped because I wasn't paying for a mortgage or anything.
So you had the ability to be able to save a little bit more. Yeah. Okay. So this is then something in which you're working towards. So you're saving. Yep. Did you find a property?
I did.
You did?
Yeah.
And tell me about that.
It's my happy place.
Oh, I love this.
I walk in there.
I can see it on your face, actually.
I walk in there and it is my space. And it's really funny because I was looking at dates the other day.
Right.
My pump was fitted on the 31st of October, 2023. I picked up the keys to my house, 31st of October, 2024.
So a year?
Exactly a year.
Halloween?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness me. Okay, so you've achieved your goals. You've smashed your career, you've smashed your education, proved them wrong, essentially.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah.
Then you made your way into the working world,
Yeah.
then you found your home. So I know that you are a very positive person. I know from our meeting before this podcast and just today in general. How have you managed to turn your mindset around with all of this that you've been through?
Because you're not going to achieve your goals if you don't.
Okay.
Because you can, like I said to you, you know, there'll be days where you are feeling down and you're struggling, and it's okay. It's okay to have those days and think, I'm just going to not speak to anyone, hide myself away, but tomorrow will be different.
Yeah.
And it might be that I'm struggling physically and I'm tired, or it might be that mentally I've just it's a lot, you know, because working full time and having a health condition, it can be stressful. But if I wanted to get to where I wanted to get to, I needed to have the good days as well.
And I love that drive and that energy that you have, because not everybody has that. I've already said it in this podcast today, but on paper, we write down the journey that you have been on. I am not shocked that there were times when you'd had enough.
Yeah.
But you are a fighter. So you've then gone, right, well, my goals aren't going to be achieved by me sitting and being really, really upset by this. You had to make it happen. So you did it, essentially. How do you view your condition now?
I don't really know, you know. I try, I mean, I go to bed thinking about it and I wake up thinking about it. But I try not to give it too much thought because it consumes you then.
Okay.
And you start thinking about all the bad when actually there's good. Like I said, you know, there's people worse off than me. You know, so I'm able to walk. I've got use of my limbs. And I've bought a house, so who cares?
I might make that the title of this podcast. What a woman. So let me just repeat that back to you, yeah? You're sat here saying, I can walk, I've got limbs.
Yeah.
So all of the stuff that I've been through could be worse.
Yeah. Could be worse.
Now, you've already shared with me where you get that mindset from, or who has helped that is your mom. But I absolutely respect that in you, because I am a big believer in we can look at each day as woe is me, and you've actually got a good reason to, I'm not going to lie, and really think, okay, well, life is out to get me then. Life is never going to be what I thought it was going to be, so I'm going to let this defeat me. Yeah. But we have a choice, and that choice is mentally.
Yeah.
You have managed to do that. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying, you are the most positive person ever. You're human. But where there is positivity to be found, it sounds as though you're able to find it.
Yeah. And I think at the very start, I grieved for the person I thought I was going to be. You know, people talk about grief and, you know, losing somebody you love, brother, sister, family member.
Yeah.
But actually, what about grieving for who you thought you imagined you were going to be? You know, I imagined, like I said, marriage, kids, really successful, you know, having all these things.
Yeah.
But actually, I thought, I'm not going to let it defeat me. And I've always said, I have PH, but it doesn't have me.
Oh, I love that.
I've always said that from the start.
I have PH, but it doesn't have me. You have a condition, but that does not define you.
No.
It doesn't set out your journey moving forwards in your life. Yeah. You've essentially received it,